Welcome to students and parents of Mr. Howe's history classes, periods 1, 2, 3, 4, and 7 at Hughes. These are unusual times, but I'm happy to be able to continue teaching and help my students learn at home. I'm going to ask for your patience. I am an old dog, and these are new tricks for me, so I'm wrestling with the best ways to deliver and collect and evaluate the things that I'm teaching and that you're learning. But I want you to know that I'm very much aware that a lot of you might have some technological challenges, printer issues, downloading issues, and all I ask of you is that you do your best to overcome of the issues and do your best to complete your assignments. I also want to assure you that as long as you try your best, no one's grade is going to go down. For students, my expectation is that you will try your best to complete your assignments. And for parents, my expectation is that you will oversee the completion of the assignments and you can help however that you feel is appropriate. The foundation for our learning while we're online is going to continue to be our textbook, Creating America. And I know that that's problematic for some of our students because especially periods 2 and period 7, most of you kept your textbook in the classroom and we haven't been authorized to check them back out to you to take home. So the first thing that I'm going to do today is to give you a quick tutorial for how any student can access the digital form of the text. We're going to be using the section assessments in the textbook. And for periods 1, 3, and 4, that's nothing unusual. You guys have been doing that all year long. But for the classes periods 2 and 7, this is going to be a change from using the reading study guides that we normally use and using the questions that are actually in the book and what they call the section assessments. So to access the textbook, if you don't have your textbook with you at home, the first thing you have to do is to just go to the regular School Loop page, lbhughes.schoolloop.com, and then you don't even log in. All you do is you put your cursor over where it says faculty, and then teachers by department will pop up and you click on teachers by department. And then you'll scroll down until you get to history, and you're going to go to Mr. Burke. And so when you click on Mr. Burke, on the left-hand side of the page, you'll see it says e-text links. And of course, we're 8th grade, so you click on e-text 8. And when you do that, you'll see a choice of units. Now, we're going to go ahead. I know we were still in chapter 11 before we had to break. But we're going to go ahead and go on to chapter 12, and so that's unit 4, A Changing Nation, so you click on that, and then you'll want to scroll until you see 12.1, Politics of the People, and then you would click on that. Now, in addition to showing you this, I'm also going to take you through exactly how you do it and give you a great model for how you find what you're supposed to find. So once you're at the main page for School Loop for Hughes, you go to Faculty, and as soon as you put your cursor over Faculty, it'll show you Teachers by Department, and that's what you click on. And then you're going to scroll down until you get to Mr. Burke. And as soon as you get to Mr. Burke, you're going to click on Mr. Burke. And then you're going to notice over on the left-hand side is the e-text 8, and that's where we're going to go. And when you do that, it'll give you a list of units. And unit 4 is the one that we're going to be starting tomorrow, Thursday, March 25th. So you're going to click on that, and then you'll notice there's Politics of the People, 12.1. That means chapter 12. Section 1, and you're going to click on that, and there you have Politics of the People. So my expectation is you're going to actually read the chapter. So that's how you start. Once you click on it, you should start reading about One American Story, and read this little section about the election of 1824. Hopefully we'll be doing a worksheet of that next week about the election of 1824 and what made that interesting. And then you're going to keep on reading and reading. Jacksonian Democracy, Strange but True. We learned about Adams and Jefferson, how they both died on the exact same day. It happened to be July 4th, 1826, a weird coincidence. People's President, Jackson Takes Office, all that great stuff, and little chart here about the difference between Jeffersonian democracy and Jacksonian democracy. And you'll read, and when you get to the end of the section, you'll see something called a section assessment. And this is what you're going to be using. Not a bad idea to go straight to this and maybe look at these things before you start reading, so you know what you're kind of looking for. That's something you can choose to do. But please do read the chapter. I know a lot of kids will go straight to the section assessment and just start looking for these things. And my advice is that gets the work done, but it doesn't help you learn what you need to learn. But you'll notice the terms and names, and there's 4 of them in this section. When you do your work, you're going to be writing these out and highlighting them or underlining them, and then writing at least a 1-sentence definition or explanation where you explain the significance of them. Number 2, using graphics. You don't have to do it while we're learning at home, because we're going to do that together as a class when we go over the work. And then you have the 3 main idea questions. This is required, where you have to write the question and then write a 2-sentence or a 2-bullet answer. And there's 3 of them, A, B, and C. Once again, you always have to write the question and have at least a 2-sentence answer. Students have, can I write more than 2? And the answer is always yes. You can always go above and beyond. And then you have the critical thinking question. And once again, this is going to be an extension question, meaning you don't have to do it, but I always appreciate it when students put in the extra effort and try to extend themselves a little bit and take a shot at answering some of the critical thinking questions. And you approach it just like a main idea question. You write the question, you underline or highlight it, and then it'll give you some think about ideas that you should include inside your answer. So the question is, what are reasons for and against the spoils system? The spoils system is something you're going to be looking at as far as a term and name, and answering some questions about it too. So in your answer, you should try to include the effects of giving government workers lifetime jobs and the effects of rewarding political supporters. And we'll go over all of these answers together. So if there's something that you got wrong, something you didn't understand, you'll have the opportunity to pause the video and to write the answers down that maybe you didn't quite exactly get correct, or didn't have a totally complete answer. So because we're going to be using the section assessments, this is how I'd like you to complete them. Now, if you're in periods 1, 3, and 4, you've been doing this all year long. So probably right now you can just click off this YouTube video. You don't have to watch any further. You've been doing this all year long. But don't forget, one of the things that we're changing is that you don't have to do the number 2 section called using graphics, because we're going to do that together when we go over the section assessments when they're due. And you also, the critical thinking question is going to become a non-required extension activity. So you don't have to do the number 4 critical thinking question and answer. I encourage you to do it, and we are going to go over it, but you're only responsible for completing the terms and names section, which is number 1 on the section assessment, and the main idea questions, which is number 3. But I'm going to walk you through how you do it right now. So once again, if you're in periods 1, 3, and 4, you've been doing this all year long, you can go ahead and just click off the YouTube tutorial and get to work if you want. For everybody else, the first thing I'd like you to do is to title your paper on the top and you're just using regular lined paper, you're just writing this out by hand, you're not going to be submitting this through Google Classroom or anything. We're just going to have you do it, and hopefully your parents supervise you and make sure you complete it. But you're going to start by putting the page number, as you can see right there, page. In this case, the first one's going to be page 373, section assessment, and you're going to write 1 through 3 basically, because that's all that's required. Once again, I'm going to encourage you to do number 4 as well. That's a critical thinking question, but as far as what's required, it's 1 through 3. So it'll look like this. It'll say page, in your case, page 373, section assessment 1 through 3, not 1 through 4. So when you do the terms and names, there's usually 4 or 5, sometimes 6 or 7 terms and names that you have to do in order to fulfill number 1. And for example, my expectation is you're going to write the word, you're going to write the term or name, you're going to highlight the word, term or name, and then you're going to write an explanation in which you explain the significance of the word, term, or name with a 1 sentence or more. And there's an example I gave. For example, on page 79 on that section assessment, one of the terms and names is slavery. And this is kind of above and beyond because this is more than 1 sentence, but it kind of shows you what a good definition of slavery would be. It gives you a general definition, then it kind of gets specific to the chapter itself. For the number 2, using graphics section, that's going to be something we're going to do together. So you don't have to do it on your own. When we go over the section assessment on the day that it's due, then you'll be able to kind of just make the using graphics yourself. But once again, if your periods 1, 3, and 4, and you've been doing this all year long, feel free to go ahead and do it on your own. But then when you get to the main idea questions, these are the comprehension questions. These are kind of checking, are you getting the main ideas that the author of the textbook wants you to get? So as you take a look at this, it says you have to write the letter and the entire question, highlight the question, and then write a 2-sentence or 2-bullet answer. The first sentence or bullet should answer the question. The second sentence or bullet should provide evidence to support your answer. And so if you want to add more details, you can always go above and beyond. You can always, add. I know there's some kids in periods 1, 3, and 4 that, write 4, 5, or 6 sentences, but the requirement is to write 2. The first sentence answers the question. The second sentence or the second bullet gives more details, elaborations, or evidence to support what you said in your first sentence. An example goes back to, once again, to page 79. One of the questions on those main idea questions on page 79 says, letter A, when did slavery begin? And an appropriate answer might be, the roots of slavery go back to the world's ancient civilizations. And then the second sentence you can see gives more detail. Slavery in the Americas by Europeans begins with the Spanish and the Portuguese in the 1500s. And that would be an appropriate answer. Then lastly, you'll notice on the section assessment on page 373, there is a critical thinking question. For periods 1, 3, and 4, this has always been required, but to kind of ease up a little bit while we're working on our stuff at home, this is becoming an extension activity. But I think it's valuable, and I encourage you to do it. They're usually not that difficult to find the answers. So you answer it just like you would a critical thinking question, but remember when we went over the section assessment, it talked about having some think about questions you should include in your answer. Like, for example, in the critical thinking question on page 79, it says, what were the long-term effects of slavery in America? In the think about section, it said include something about economy, include something about the African diaspora, and include how it affected cultures. And you can see I kind of bolded those in my answer to show that I was including the think about ideas in my answer. So that's how you do. Those are the standards I have for completing section assessments. And once again, the difference between the past and now is that in the past you had to do 1 through 4. Now, while we're learning at home, you're only going to be required to do number 1, terms and names, and number 3, main ideas by yourself. And then when we go over the section assessments in the next YouTube video. We'll do the using graphics together, and then I'll show you an appropriate answer for number 4 on the critical thinking. So here's a good model of what a section assessment looks like. You can see the student wrote the page number, page 470, section assessment. That's what you have to do, but yours will say page 373, section assessment. The number 1 section, you can see, has the terms and names highlighted. And if you don't have a highlighter, don't forget, you can always underline things. Some students choose to put a box around it, underline it, highlight it. And then you have your, in this case, she only wrote 1 sentence answers. That's all that's required, is to have 1 sentence. Maybe this one had 2 sentences. But once again, a 1 sentence answer is all you have to do. The using graphics, we're going to do together, so you don't have to do that on your own unless you want to. I always appreciate it when students go above and beyond to do some extra work on their own. And once again, if you periods 1, 3, and 4, you've been doing this all year, so it may not be that challenging to you. But for periods 2 and 7, if you want to wait to do the using graphics and do it together when we go over it when it's due, that's fine. The main idea questions, you can see, she wrote the question, highlighted the question, and you can see on this first answer, boy, she went way above and beyond because she wrote more than 2 sentences. And once again, I encourage that, but the requirement is that you just do just 2 sentences or 2 bullets. She has the A question, she has the B question and answer, she has the C question and answer. And the critical thinking question she did on her own. She did that extension. You'll also notice that because this was already collected, I think this is from a couple years ago, but you'll notice that she has extra things on the side in red. And what that is, and once again, if you're periods 1, 3, and 4, we've been doing this all year. When we go over the answers, if your answer is right, and it has the right idea that I say is a good answer, but there's some ideas in the answers that you didn't have, I always encourage you to add some extra ideas that may not have been in your answer, but were included in the answer when we go over it. So once again, that's something I would love to see you do. Add some extra notes. It kind of shows that you're paying attention. It shows that you're maybe you have the right idea but missed a couple of details, but you chose to add that to your paper. That shows that you're paying attention and that you're actively involved with the learning. So anyway, I hope that this tutorial has helped you kind of have an idea of how to access the book digitally as we teach and learn at home. We're gonna, like I said, we're going to skip the ending of chapter 11 and go right to chapter 12, which is about Andrew Jackson and Jacksonian democracy, and we'll talk about why that's important, especially today. And I thank you for tuning in, and feel free to email me any questions if there's something you don't understand, and hopefully we'll get through this together. Thanks.